Yeah, I think what you have to think about is really where it hits the buyer's journey. And a perfect example, I suppose, could be something like holidays. So if you're thinking about e-commerce, the different devices play into different parts of the use case as you get closer and closer to the finish line, which is Christmas, for most people for the holiday season, right, in terms of shopping. And what we saw with our data was that oftentimes that journey changed quite a bit, the composition of that journey in terms of the traffic that you were getting on one device. Obviously, desktop starts pretty big right before Thanksgiving. So next week, actually next Monday, will be a huge day for e-commerce, largely on the desktop. People will still be at work. But then you see as you get closer and closer to Christmas that transitions in terms of traffic to mobile devices. And it makes sense because when you think about how you shop, you can only ship things for so long, and then you're actually on your phone, and you got to hurry up and go and find it. You can't show up, empty-handed with your kid, or your spouse, or whoever it is that you've got to have a present for. So that obviously shifts your behavior onto a different device. So what you have to think about is the use case and the measurements around that use case for that different device. Because when you think about the mobile use case, it's not necessarily that you're going to convert. It's not necessarily that you're going to actually go that far. You're actually potentially looking to see, is this product in this store that's near me on my way to where I have to get to? And the nice thing about the holidays is that gives you a perfect glimpse into that with a really finite timeline, so that you can kind of back into it. But then you've got to think, if you're an e-commerce company, you've got to think about the rest of the year, what the rest of the year looks like on a timeline that's totally varied, because your birthdays that you shop for, yourself that you shop for, is different all the time. But you've really got to tease out those different use cases and figure out how you're going to use that data about the way that people are trying to get their way through the site to a product or to some sort of a finish line, even if that finish line isn't in the store that I'm driving to.
Yeah, so as it relates to best practices, what I was getting at was, so I work with a number of different markets, typically local, typically brick and mortar. And the vanity metrics that most people are most familiar with, bounce rate, time on site, are so widely inconsistent across different markets, it really doesn't tell you anything. And as far as I'm concerned, best practices are keep your eye on the ball, keep your eye on conversions. I've had time after time where I've had to explain to clients why less time on site might be better, why higher bounce rate might be better. It's not hard to imagine that even having a user experience on the website that's maybe polarizing, that maybe generates a higher bounce rate, might actually resonate more with a smaller percentage of people and therefore get higher conversions. So keeping your eye on the ball, being conversion focused, and then ultimately setting up ways to A/B test on your website with conversions in mind is really what I'm most concerned with when I'm trying to take care of clients.
I think trying to simplify what they're all saying, because you guys took like a roundabout way of saying it. One was, I think you mentioned you're just trying to segment your audience, right?
Yeah.
You're really trying to figure out who's converting for you. Your persona's kind of a way of doing that too. You have likely a few different people that you're trying to market to. And I think persona is just kind of a buzzword for marketers only. They're saying like, this is who I think our buyer is, right? He's a 27-year-old male. He wears clothes like this and XYZ. Like that's, you're trying to take a stab at making a segment and marketing to that. Yeah, segmentation is important. Measuring what's truly important to your business. Keeping your eye on the ball. Sometimes time on site doesn't matter. Sometimes your verticals are somewhere else that you're trying to build. But yet, measuring in general. But the best and most actionable advice is to take action on the measurements. Don't just look at your data and go, well, shit, what does that mean? Like you really have to have those conversations with other people in your team that can help you execute on that as well.
Well, that's more of the B2C type of use case, I think, coming from more of a B2B background. When people are coming in, whether it's through the ad or they've hit your website, then trying to cycle through and see who this person really is and respond with the content that's relative to persona, right? So I see so many companies, I've consulted with a lot of them, where it's like no matter who has come through the site, they send them the exact same material every single time. And whether they came from an event and they follow back to the event, they send the same email. Oh, send it to everybody. You got to look, are they customers or non-customers? Are they developers? Are they architects? Are they the business people? You got to send them the right content for that and then get them right into those right nurture streams that match to that persona. So it's like, it's a combination of account-based marketing in terms of going after the right accounts, but also persona-based within that to make sure you get the right content. What I call content for demand.
So can I ask, how do you define a persona? Is it based on a segment of your customer database? What is a persona?
Well, when they come in, you've got it, so there's a couple things. One is either you can capture it on its way in, if you have it right in your forms or whatever. The other thing is there's very good enrichment products that are out there right now, like ReachForce and others, whereby as they fill out that form, all that data is then checked against another database, so you can get all kinds of pieces about it, including the normalizing the company name and checking that person's role and title. So, for example, the worst thing to do is to have a open field that says put in your title. So then you get every iteration of every role and function in your business. Or you just have a drop down that just says marketing and role. So you have function and role being like manager, senior manager, director, VP, right? Now you can take that and you can segment and create those lists right as they come through, right? Or like say, use ReachForce or similar products, then it'll just enhance that or enrich your data as it comes in, and then you should be able to put those in the nurture stream based upon that.
The last panel that was in the room here before, somebody asked the audience actually, how many of them as marketers get out and actually talk to customers? How many of you as marketers feel like, exactly, but probably not enough of them, right? How many of you feel like you're kind of tasked with figuring out who the hell your customer is and what matters to them without ever actually talking to any of them? Yeah.
Right, well, I mean, it is difficult to scale inherently, but you should kind of be doing that research one-to-one. I mean, that comes with industry experience. Like I feel like fine-tune my personal audience. I do a lot of copyright for clients. I do B2B tech software companies between 50 and 200 people. Teams that are in the marketing department that are having difficulty scaling their content into higher-end publications. It's pretty damn niche, right? So I talk to a bunch of content marketers and a bunch of directors and marketers and they're like, how do we improve our PR? Those are people I just talk to one-on-one without even trying to sell them. It's just a lot of research, understanding what their pain points are. And you're not going to necessarily get a pain point from a data sheet.
Okay, I'm going to take it in a different direction just because we want to be sensitive of the time. And happy to ask you first, if somebody wants to chip in, what do you think is the future of this space? What are things that definitely are happening that we all need to be aware of before I put it to the pen? Anybody? Yes?
I think a lot of people these days are really focused more on split testing and conversion optimizing in a way that wasn't happening a few years ago, both on ad channels and optimizing areas.
So I certainly agree with that. That's happening right now. And that's going to continue to happen, you're right. Overall, we're just trying to figure out how to talk to each of our segments in more of a one-to-one manner. If I can pull you aside, Jesse, and have a conversation with you through my marketing channels and automate that the best I can and scale that, I mean, I think that's where the future is going, is finding ways to really talk to more people one-to-one, or as close to personalized and personalization as possible.
Dan, you were saying something about combining account-based marketing and persona marketing. What is that?
Well, I was talking about that earlier as well, but I think to respond to kind of where the question around the future. So I think, and relative to, sorry, Justin.
Jacob?
Jacob, there you go. Go to Jack.
Justin 1, Justin 2.
As Jacob was saying, you really, when people come, or when you have a new prospect or whatever it may be, you want to know as much about them as possible, right? All their information. I think where things are going is, perhaps they've responded to one campaign, they've clicked through an ad, or they've downloaded something on your website. What are all the other things that they're doing on your website? What is all the other content that they've been engaging with? That's non-gated, right? So they've just been viewing these other pages. There's both information for marketing there, and there's information for sales. So marketers want to know, well, what should I give them next? But the salespeople want to know, what is the topic that I want to have a conversation about? And they start seeing, well, wow, they went to this webcast, which is on this topic over here, but all the pages on the site that they're visiting have nothing to do with that. And that's interesting. So they can then have a conversation or send an email that says, hey, are you interested in A, B, or C? I'm ready to do this, as opposed to just like, I saw you downloaded, blah, blah, blah. It's very generic. So the other thing that's going to happen is, down to this device level, is that there's a few companies, and this one agency I'm working with, they're starting to track what people are doing out on the web across all the other sites by topic and by device. And they're going to start bringing that into your marketing automation system. And so what you're going to see is, you're going to pull it, somebody's going to come through as a lead, And then combined with that is going to be like, oh, by the way, these are the articles that they've read in eWeek. Here's what they're doing on CIO Magazine. You're going to have everything, and it's going to be a monster amount of data, but when you cycle it through at a topic level, you can start to kind of figure out. So that's where you get this persona. The account piece of it is when you add up all those personas across a target account, and then you have a picture of what this account's doing.
Yeah,
So,
please.
yeah.
What's the name of that company?
Big Willow, the Big Willow.
Big Willow.
Yeah, demand base is getting there as well, if you guys are familiar with demand base.
So, and how do
Yeah, I
they,
know demand.
What's
how
that?
do they track? How do they track?
So they've basically put out, they're working through a whole bunch of data service providers who are basically scouring the web over sets of topics. So if you're a client of theirs, you're going to tell them, these are my top 20 keywords or SEO words that you're going after, right? And the types of sites that they go to. So for example, let's take an IT solution as an example, right? So that's going to be media sites that might be things like Spiceworks and communities around IT. If you took all that digital properties that they're going to, they're kind of seeing that. When you bring that into your CRM system, then you can start to see like, wow, here's the 50 accounts that we're talking to, and here's 50 accounts that are doing all this research across the web that are nowhere near our CRM system right now. And that gives you, like marketers, a whole new way of like going after kind of this intent-based marketing, if you will. But then it gets down to like, okay, that's the account, but then who you get to that. How do you know who to go after?
It's like retargeting even before there's a conversion.
Exactly. And there's companies like MemSQL, I met them recently. They, what they're doing is they're taking that digital traffic who's not in, that they don't have traction in, and they're setting up their marketing automation system to like send those people. They're doing basically, not only backwards IP, but also some backwards tracking to say like, oh, this is an IT office of Cisco here in this state. So I'm going to go through LinkedIn or LeadSpace or whatever, pull all the names of people who are in that location, and I'm going to start blasting this because I already know they're looking at this topic. And so, yeah, it's like before the click comes through, I think. But to me, that's where I think the digital tracking is starting now. It's off your property.
You know what I think that touches on though, that most sites are really pretty crap at, is content awareness. They don't have a clue. Most of us who use Google Analytics or Omniture or anything else, it's just a dumb URL, and you don't actually know what's in that URL unless you go to that URL. And if you have thousands of pages or if you're a content creator, good luck, right? Good luck. You might have to tag all that stuff or something, but it's going to be really difficult for you to figure that out, and certainly going to be difficult for you to build in the intelligence in the site to understand someone's intent as well as the content and try to match those two things together. So
right, but
I
if
think
they're
that's a big
reading,
jump they're going to have to make.
if they're on e-retail and they're reading about, retail page optimization or SEO, whatever it may be, right? Like that's now a topic that you do.
But the hard part is you're going to get them to your own site, and your own site might not be
That's
smart
hard.
enough to actually to provide them with the right type of content.
What was the other
really hard.
company you mentioned besides
Big Willow?
Big Will?
Demand base?
No, that yeah, but I think you said the retargeting even before the reach out. What was
Reach Force?
another?
Big Willow, and there was another one. You mentioned two.
Yeah.
So MemSQL, they're a client, they're just a user of that. That's more of a case study. That
Oh,
wasn't a
right
provider.
behind you.
That wasn't a provider.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Big Willow?
the Big Willow, yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Are there any other questions here about this? Is that clear?
So I maybe have one about.
I don't think you have any more questions.
Okay, great.
No, I'm sorry, ask that one, but I want to move it along a little bit and have everybody participate.
Besides the three of us.
Exactly. You guys are out and half the panel doesn't get to talk anymore. Go ahead.
So I was wondering, what about retention? Because we're talking about before the click, but how important do you guys think retention is? Because that's after the click, and that's basically super important to make your clients stick around, right? How important do you think is going to be in the future, focusing on retention?
So are you talking about customer retention or are you
Yeah.
talking about them returning to your site?
Customer retention.
I think somebody before mentioned the generic messaging, right?
Yeah.
Right, that everybody gets the same generic thing, and for the most part, that's what you get every time you go to a single website. But if you're a returning customer, and they know something about you, and you're in their CRM system, and they've seen you in store, and you're part of the loyalty program, and they've got this demographic information about you and everything, you should be using that when you get back to the site, right? When you go there, you should have a different experience than somebody else does. And that can't just be in three buckets of new user, returning user, someone with kids, or whatever the three shitty personas are that they try to shove everybody into on those sites, right? They've got to be smarter than that, and if they've got a whole record of you and you engage with that site, and you've shown them a great deal about you, why not use that?
Yeah, you're creating personalized experiences.
Right.
For each person.
So customization is super important for you guys.
Actually, kind of goes something I was going to say about the future of
Okay, so it's your
CLX.
turn. You were talking about dynamic content. I want to really hear about this dynamic content.
They really jumped right into it, and I didn't know about the technology you were talking about, but I like the idea of, if I know what my users are reading, I can almost use their colloquial expressions. I can use their jargon. I can use their terms. That's really, really exciting to me as a marketer. And yeah, so my comments were simply about just having dynamic content in general, and your homepage doesn't have to look the same to everybody. It could be someone who's just a returning user, or someone married, or someone with a certain income level. But
How can you
that personalization is great.
And do you know?
Optimizely, VWO.
But that's
Just
like
metrics.
One line.
binary.
Well, they
VWO?
take take data the first time you're there, and then so Optimizely can actually, once they know, anyone in your company has like signed on to Optimizely or done any of their tracking, however they're capturing your data. Anyone within that IP, like if you're at work checking out Optimizely, it will show your website on the page and talk to you directly.
Yeah, but it's like customer segmentation, right? You only have like aggregates you can.
Right. So as we're still kind of theorizing about the future, it's going to be more and more fine-tuned as we continue learning.
Here's what we can expect.
And the majority of the personalization is really possible once somebody actually signs in with an email address, right? Then you can kick it off and have special offers
they
and
know your
special
IP.
landing pages. If you just land, you need, it sounds to me really sophisticated, well, but more expensive, sophisticated software. You don't think so?
You need something sophisticated. So I can plug them and talk about them openly since I don't work there anymore. But that's what Bloomreach does actually.
They're really good.
But you were telling me it's not for small companies.
No, it's not. It would be if you're a larger retailer or something, for the most part. But basically, you do get some sense of what the person is by what they engage with. So if you know what the products are and they've clicked on a few of them, I can get a pretty good sense of the things that you have an affinity for. If they're brands, if it's a gender, if it's a price point, if there are any of these types of things, and that can change the rest of the experience. So while some of these tools can change things like the homepage or the offers that you see, what Bloomreach's technology actually ends up doing is re-ranking pages. So if you go to a category page for shirts, I might see totally different stuff than you would see just based on the way that we've engaged with that page. Because if you sell 170 different shirts, the one in 170th place that no one's ever going to find scrolling through the page might be the perfect one for you or for me, but that's never going to see the light of day, and it's never going to get any conversion.
And thank you for saying that, because Justin was talking about, if I understand this right, you think that Steve Jobs was right when he said the customer doesn't always know what he wants.
Oh, that's certain.
Right? And you were using that in regards to website clicking and behavior. You had a great case study, and I wouldn't mind if you shared.
Oh, absolutely. This is actually probably one of my favorite examples. So I work with a brick and mortar furniture store in Orlando. I would do about $10 million a year. We've got a 30,000 square foot showroom, and using heat maps, so where people are clicking on the website, we use crazyegg.com. I'll write that down in a minute. Crazyegg.com. We saw that the most used element on our website is the search bar. It's probably not surprising. People land on the website, they type in exactly what they look for first, typically leather sofa, contemporary bedroom set, something like that, right? But what those users don't know, that I know, that we know, business knows, that it's garbage. It's a garbage search bar. It creates terrible results. We have no control over whether it shows up. Most of the products show up in some sort of chronological order on how recently we're updated on the website. It's absolutely terrible. And so we have to make a decision. We know the customers want this search bar. They navigate to it first. But do we want to put time and money into improving it? Or what if we just remove it altogether? Does the customer need a search bar? Okay. We have an excellent navigation menu. When they navigate through the menu, we have control over what products they see. We have control over what order they see the products. We don't know. There's no way we can know. We have to actually test it. So again, using I use VWO.com. That's a visual website optimizer, by the way. We took a small percentage of the traffic, probably about 15% first, and we just didn't show them a search bar. And what we found out, and this goes back to what you're saying, users don't always know what they want because they're navigating it first. We found our key performance indicators, our conversions, were up 15% compared to the control. So when we had control over what they saw, and we decided we didn't want to spend X amount of time and money on improving our search bar, that's the result we got. It's just an interesting little tidbit, it's a fun story. There's some downsides to it, because obviously if somebody visits a product and they want to navigate back to it, having a search bar is a little bit of an issue. So we did have a search bar, but it's less accessible. We put it in the sidebar of the site, so only on internal pages. If you really wanted to, you could find it, search it, type it in. But very, very interesting results. That's just think outside the box, really.
And you could have done some A/B testing on that too.
No, we did.
Well, that is it,
Yeah.
Right.
And we found it was actually a 15%.
I thought it was
Increase
before
in
and after.
Well, so, and you tested a little bit at a time, right? How did you scale that out to make sure, like,
So
you're like, wow, that was a great conversion rate, and just like,
No,
all right, that's what they get now.
we started 15%, 40%, 60%
Yeah,
up to 100.
So the important thing is we scaled it up to make sure we didn't just like
Yeah.
completely get false
I
data.
could completely.
Right. Oh, sorry guys. You gotta make sure that no conversions
Yeah.
now. I don't know what happened.
And we're talking about a website that we do about 15,000 a month in PPC through being ads in Google AdWords. So you can get an idea of the traffic. Some of you guys are working with much bigger brands. You'll learn much quicker. You can use a much smaller percent of the population of your users. Started with 15, moved up to 100 over the course of a few weeks, and everything was fine.
Perfect.
So
So I was just calling that key point, like, don't just like,
yeah, don't just say
oh, that looks great, and turn it off. And then you also probably should consider seasonality too.
Absolutely should.
Right. Seasonality in retail is really big, as you were talking about.
Absolutely.
What about demographics, like, were you able to see like different audiences that were more susceptible or not less susceptible?
You know, you didn't test that, but that gives me a great idea. And again,
And I'll tell you why I asked that,
Yeah.
because like when I search, when I'm in e-commerce sites, I search, I'm usually playing around the navs because like, I'm a digital person and I kind of know, I can figure it out. But my kids, they always go to the search bar.
yeah.
They don't want anything to do with navigation.
Yeah.
Okay, as we have 5 minutes left, I have an audience question. Would you rather we talk about some tips that these guys feel they definitely need to know to be successful in the next 3 years, or would you rather hear some more stories of real examples where they have applied things like Justin C just shared? So who wants to know tips that you can't miss? Raise your arm. And who would like more stories of the real world? Excellent. So Justin, you're on, and then we'll go back this way. Thank you.
About what?
I just wanted to give
What story time?
Well, we're talking about post-click activity and all the wisdom you've shared. We want to hear stories where you've implemented it and people can actually relate to it. You know, what does it mean? How have you done it? Like Justin just did.
Yeah. So,
This is where you find out if they really know what they're talking
so
about.
one of mine is I think in some sense you have to go. I think we've all kind of bought into the idea that data is going to tell us everything. And if I could just get the right data set, then I'll know everything. And I actually do think, like I said before about going out into the field, I think seeing real humans is really important. I would actually urge you to figure out if there's a way that you can go and look at individual, like pixelized experiences that somebody had on your own site, because I think it can be quite revealing. For example, Neiman Marcus is a big customer of Bloomreach, and I had a project at one point where I was looking at presenting something to them about where their experience might be broken. So I got a couple of pixel logs of different people, navigated my way through the site, and if everybody, I mean, I'm sure you're all familiar with Neiman Marcus, and you can probably imagine who shops there. A woman spent, I think, $7,000 on 5 different dresses, and then briefly browsed over at purses and shoes. So why would you spend like that many thousands of dollars and then not get any kinds of accessories to go with it? Because she's going to send all of them except one back. Right? She's going to get them, she's going to try them on, she's going to send them back, and then she'll buy the shoes and the other stuff to go with it, right? That doesn't come through the data. That's like only if you go in and actually put yourself in the mind of the shopper that you're going to see stuff like that. And everybody's site has places like that you've all drank your own Kool-Aid and built your own, magical world, and you don't necessarily know what it's like for a real shopper. So I would definitely encourage you to figure out how you can get a glimpse into what somebody out there is actually doing.
How would you, what's your advice on what's the best way to get that put human intelligence behind that data?
Talking to people.
So what should they have done next? Like what should Neiman
Now,
do?
like somebody figured it out that she's buying 7 dresses, she's not going to keep them up, which is awesome, but not everybody can pick on that and different scenarios like that, how do you?
Well, obviously she sent them back because companies track this stuff. I mean, when he's telling the story, it sounds simple, but if you look at your clients, they buy these amounts and then they send a lot back, that's when you know. But Jacob has to leave soon and we'll go a little over, but we'll let him answer first.
I was kind of hoping to get out of it,
I
but
know, that's why I'm putting you on the
I'm
spot.
going to make it a tip, and it was real quick. I've worked with a lot of startups and a lot of companies that are just 2, 3 people on a marketing team, sometimes 5, 10. I found that actually by canceling a lot of the tools that we had, we were able to save more money and hire more people. Because I took an honest look at our marketing maturity level, and I said, look, nobody here is smart enough to use Marketo. No offense. The people that do have the time for it are busy in more strategic things. So do we need it right now? And so we ended up taking all of the money that we were spending on Marketo, and then we had HubSpot at the same time, which no one knew how to use. And we took all that money, put it in the paid search, and then drove our email list instead, and then just
I totally agree with that.
started the engagement from that.
I totally agree with that. I'm a social media consultant, and so many times I tell people, I don't think you should be doing social media right now. Like, you should do other
Take
things.
an honest look at your
Very
maturity
honest.
level.
An honest vendor.
And it's not necessarily like you're not good enough or you're not going to be able to figure out how to do it. It's just sometimes the software is beyond, it can do so much more, and you ideally you want to grow into that, but you have so many tactical things and strategic things to get your team ready to be at that point that you don't always need it yet. And it's okay, and people at Salesforce will push Salesforce on you too early sometimes, and that's okay. Like, you want to grow into it, and then sometimes it is right to just put all your eggs in one basket.
So we'll give him applause in case he has to run off. Have a safe trip back.
Thank you.
Who hasn't been able to share their war story?
I think it's just you.
Oh,
I started
it's me.
with more story.
War story. One company I was at, which was Hortonworks, before this recent fall piece, we tried to down one of these predictive analytic paths, and this was actually the second go around for it. And the company, but the reality is we went back to the original lead scoring piece, which was in Marketo. And the reason we went back to it and were able to make it much better is that we just got better sales alignment on the lead scoring. So rather than before, what happened is they'd done it in a box, and the salespeople really got unhappy with the lead scoring. So they thought, oh, we'll bring in the predictive analytics. And I just was joining the company when they were implementing it. And when the thing got turned on, like literally where they started to bump up the leads based upon what all the other characteristics, they were only supposed to do like from here to forward of any lead coming in, but instead it went back to every recycled lead in the database, of which there was like 100,000 of them or more, and then rerouted those back over to the salespeople. Yeah. And so something happened, and then I'm standing at my desk. I have probably 5 people in marketing operations at the time who were working on this piece, and they were like literally lined up at my door of my office, and it was the whole inside sales team. And I'm like, what happens? Like, our queues just exploded, and so it was just like turn it off right then and there. But we were able to backtrack it out in about 12 hours or so, so it wasn't like the end of the day, because we knew what characteristics of the leads that back out there. But I just would just really caution people what Jacob was just saying. It's, there is such an overkill mentality with some of these tools that you have to really figure out what's the net improvement that you're going to get out of it, and is it worth this much more in payment to do it. And as great as, I don't want to get in front of that other session or anything like that, but as great as predictive is, I just ask people, tell me how much better it's going to be versus I got today, because that's what you're paying for, right? It's that net improvement. Yes, the story sounds great, but what's the net? If I get to the sales guys and I say, this is our target account list, and they go, well, we can make it better by predicting who these accounts are, well, but how much better? That's all I'm going to ask people. How much better? If they can't answer that, don't spend the money.
And I have one story, it's not my personal story, but that really stuck with me that I read recently about Sephora. I think most of you probably know that store, and it's kind of in the vein of what Justin F. was talking about, that they were noticing that so many, especially younger people, come into the store and they look at makeup, for example, and then they immediately go on their phone. And my first thought was, well, they're more rejected prices, right? But that's actually not true. They are looking at videos that show them how to use the makeup. They're looking at recommendations, on other sites. How high is this rated? How good is this? Tons of stuff. So what Sephora did is they said, you know what, we want this traffic. So they built their own community. So now, and obviously they can incent people to gather all this data, which is exactly what you've been talking about. So I was pretty fascinated by that. So if you go to the store, you can probably just scan, I'm imagining just scan the barcode and then all this stuff comes up. And at the same time, they get this wealth of information. So it's pretty fascinating. And again, it's that's why I'm saying it's like Justin, where maybe first assumption is, why are they on their phone? Do they not want to buy this? But they really want to buy this. They just want more information. And so you have to get into the mind of, and I'm not going to say the M word, shopper, because I'm so tired of that word. You all know what I'm talking about? It's just people do different things than we think. And I wanted to close up by saying, are there any more questions, any more comments that you would like to make? Everybody really ready to get on to the next session, and we're good with that, and we thank you for your attention.